Okay, so about 6 months ago, I started to feel like my attention span was actually kind of maybe broken. And I'm not talking about work, where I know everyone procrastinates a bit. I was starting to feel like I couldn't concentrate for more than a few minutes at a time, even if I was reading a book that I was really enjoying or watching a movie that I really wanted to see. I even started to notice that I was getting distracted when I was playing with my son, and that's when I decided I needed to do something about it. So I think I did, and in this video I want to talk about how I did that, but also how it changed my life and took me from a point where I felt like I was really scrambling to fit everything in, to a point where I felt like I had plenty of time to do everything I wanted to do and still have time to like chill out and play with my boy whenever I wanted to, or whenever he wanted to. But it all starts with probably the simplest change you can go and make right now, which is to change your environment. So this is the thing that you probably already kind of feel like you know you should be doing. It's so simple that it feels like it shouldn't work, but it actually does. So for instance, there are studies to show that just having a phone near you is a distraction and reduces your ability to think properly. But more than that, having a phone near you just makes you more likely to pick it up. And the thing is, I already knew this. Whenever I have a phone on a desk or a table next to me or in a pocket when I'm like sitting on the train, I'm very likely to pull it out and have a quick scroll through it whenever I get a few seconds of downtime. You probably have this too. It's that little like magnetic pull of attraction you feel whenever that little square of glass and metal is near you. And the thing is, I actually don't need my phone on me a lot of the time. I'm not a paramedic and I'm not on call for anything, so anytime my family is near me, there's no real need for anybody else to be contacting me urgently. So the first thing I did was to have rules about when I would carry my phone. And those rules are basically, anytime I'm at home with my family, my phone stays in a drawer upstairs, out of sight, so I actually have to put in physical effort to go and check it. At night, my phone goes away when my boy goes to bed, and I don't check it in the morning until I've already made my first things list for the day. If you're interested in what a first things list actually is and how I make one, I'll put a link in the video description. Another thing that really helped me was a tool called Distraction Blocker, which kind of turns your smartphone into a dumb phone, so that whenever you do actually pick it up, you're not confronted with this wild, colourful gallery of potential distractions, but just basically text with the most important thing to you right at the top. When I'm out and about, I have a special ringtone so that my wife is the only one who can contact me if it's something urgent. I tend to work in 25-minute bursts, and there are basically two reasons for that. Firstly, it's about the maximum amount of time I can kind of sustain my concentration. But secondly, it's kind of a good amount of time to be uncontactable for. Even in my work, which gets kind of busy, it's pretty rare that anybody needs to talk to me like more urgently than a 25-minute window lets them. But if 25 minutes is a struggle, or you're looking to get into even longer bursts of productive activity, then my best advice is to treat it like training. So the way I think about this is, if you hadn't been to the gym for a few months, you hopefully wouldn't jump back straight into your first session with like a 10K or a really long, arduous workout. You'd do a few shorter efforts and then kind of build up your work capacity over time. And so that's kind of what I did with my attention span. I started tackling reading or deep work like an interval training session, with periods of focus that felt just about manageable, interspersed with short breaks and then full recovery before the next focused activity. So there are a bunch of ways you can do this. Maybe you want to start with 10-minute blocks of work interspersed with 2-minute rests, and then build up to like 15-minute blocks with slightly longer rests, and eventually try and get all the way up to 25 minutes. Or if you want to be a bit more fluid with it, you can just work until you kind of naturally feel like your attention span starts to fail. Then get up, get away from your desk, whether that's to grab like a snack or do a few press-ups, and then go back to the activity without like sitting at your desk procrastinating. The whole point is to maximize the amount of quality time you spend doing the activity, not the longest burst you can do in one go. And the thing about this is the time builds up. When I first started doing this, I would find myself getting distracted after just a few minutes, but eventually I found myself being able to focus for longer and longer before I needed to get up and move around. And as I was reading more of the stuff I wanted to read and watching more of the stuff I actually wanted to watch, I found myself wanting to take more notes, which is where the next bit of advice comes in, which is to always carry a notebook. Because the thing is, the other thing that breaks my attention a lot, and quite often has me scrambling for my phone or my laptop, is when I come across an idea that I want to get down on paper so that I don't forget it. That might be a quote from whatever I'm reading, an idea that comes to me for a video or a newsletter, a way of connecting to things I've thought about, or just a job that I've remembered and I don't want to forget. And the secret to dealing with these is really simple. You just write them down as they come to you. Personally, I don't like doing this on a computer or a phone because it means you've got that handy distraction available to you at all times. And we've already talked about why that's a bad idea. So instead of that, I pretty much always have a notebook with me when I'm reading or chilling out on the couch. And so if I have an idea or I remember something important, I can just scribble it down quickly and get on with my day. Then when I'm next at my desk, I'll check in on those notes and move them over to whatever system makes the most sense. That's usually the spreadsheet I keep for feature and newsletter ideas, but it might be like a more complicated system that I've been running for a few months now, and I will probably talk about in another video. Until I get around to that though, the most key thing to remember is just keep some kind of physical notebook on hand to write down all the things that are important to you, and then have a system for checking them every couple of days so that you can copy them into like a more permanent format, like a spreadsheet or a Word document. And I'm not gonna lie, at first, the system of like having a notebook everywhere you go and remembering to write things down in it and then copy them to somewhere else a couple of days later does feel like a little bit of extra effort when all you want to do is be reading a book. But it's been so useful in helping me remember what I read and also see the connections between different ideas that I think it's been absolutely worth the effort. But I don't think any of this stuff is going to work if you forget maybe the most important thing, which is don't be too hard on yourself. So I don't actually meditate, but I did try it for like an extended period a couple of years ago. And what I found most useful about it is that it's basically a way to control your focus. So I think a lot of people have the idea that meditation is a way of clearing your mind completely and being like totally at peace with the world. And I don't know, maybe for some people it is that. But for me, it was always being about bringing your focus to one point, whether that's like your own breathing or the sounds of the world around you, or just the physical sensations in your own body. So you learn that kind of the worst thing you can do when a thought intrudes on your meditation is to beat yourself up over it and get angry that you're not meditating right. The real goal is to notice the thought, not judge yourself, and bring yourself slowly back to whatever you're focusing on. Your mind is going to wander, and the important thing is to learn to bring it gently back to whatever you want to focus on. And that was the real value of meditation for me, because this practice of like getting distracted, but then not really getting angry, but just gently going back to whatever you're like trying to focus on, is actually a really useful tool across a whole bunch of areas. So I think that's the final part of this whole process. If you do find your attention start to wander, don't beat yourself up over it. Just notice what you've done and gently bring yourself back to whatever you're trying to focus on. But there's one more thing to think about. Because even if you learn all this stuff and put it into practice, it still really helps to get used to getting started on projects so you can then focus on them. And for more about that, I recommend watching this video next. I will hopefully see you over there.